Ben Shapiro is not too happy with Tucker Carlson. Again, this is not the first time. Apparently, the appearance that Tucker Carlson made on Joe Rogan's show really does have Ben Shapiro up in arms. Ben Shapiro is not too happy with Tucker Carlson speaking this anti-war rhetoric, which he basically points out in this video. It's wild when you think about it. He considers this to be like a left talking point. So let's go ahead and get into this discussion from Ben Shapiro. It is a mess, okay? It is a hot mess.
There's a weird horseshoe theory thing that's happening here. We've talked about it before on the program, that you have this constellation of far leftists who are rather friendly toward Hamas, who generally are isolationist on foreign policy, but they're isolationist on foreign policy mainly because they believe that the United States is a nefarious force in the world. They're sort of Howard Zinn or Noam Chomsky with regard to American foreign policy. America is actually bad. That horseshoe theory has now swung all the way around, and it includes some people on the right. Now, as we'll talk about in a moment, when it comes to isolationism, as we've discussed, there are a bunch of different perspectives within the isolationist perspective. There is the we should not get involved in foreign conflicts no matter what perspective because we need the money here at home, which means that you're also in favor of cutting spending by the government on a wide variety of other subjects. There's also an isolationism that suggests that whenever America gets involved in foreign conflicts, that tends to taint the United States, not it's about the United States tainting the rest of the world. But there is a theory that has now arisen on the right that there is something deeply malign about the United States, something deep.
Let me pause here for a second. So the thing is this, I'm sorry, but the United States government we are the country that has bases all over the world. What other country has like 800 bases across the world? Can't think of one. We are the ones trying to police other countries, not the other way around, right? We are the ones who steal resources from a lot of these countries. We're not the only ones. The UK has done this as well, but usually it's us. We are the ones that create regime change in other countries. We're the ones trying to overthrow other leaders in other countries. So I'm not sure what Ben is talking about, but yes, when you look at the research and when you look at the history, all roads seem to lead back to us.
Wrong with the United States. This was made apparent over the weekend. Tucker Carlson was on Joe Rogan's show. Obviously, I'm very friendly with Joe. I think Joe does a great job during his interviews. And there was a clip from this interview that went particularly viral. This is a clip in which Tucker Carlson calls the United States evil for having dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, ending World War II, and then suggests that anyone who would justify that is also evil, which is a very traditionally left-wing perspective.
Why is it a left-wing perspective to be against dropping bombs on civilians? I mean, I'm looking at this in reference to a humanitarian issue. Like, why is that? That shouldn't even be a left position. And it seems apparent to me that Ben Shapiro is not aligned with the anti-war right or conservatives or libertarian base. He doesn't seem to be aligned with them. He's perfectly fine with civilians dying. And you can see that from the rhetoric that he has about Israel and Gaza. He's totally fine with that because he feels like at the end it serves a greater good. But we have to ask this question: a greater good according to who? And what is the greater good? And is the greater good actually a greater good or greater evil?
It is not traditionally a particularly right-wing perspective because most people on the conservative side of the aisle tend to believe that America is a force for good in the world. And as we'll discuss, it turns out that dropping the atomic bomb on Japan was necessary for ending World War II and likely saved millions of lives, both American and Japanese. But here is Tucker.
Well, you could say the same about the atomic bomb, right?
Yes, you could.
And you could say that we have to develop it like Oppenheimer felt before the Nazis did.
I love that. How'd that work?
Pause. Look, Oppenheimer was conflicted about that. This is a piece that we cannot leave out. Oppenheimer is not like he was jumping up and down for joy after this. He struggled with this and the fact that so many people were killed. Even before it was used, he struggled with the fact that wait a minute, this is so powerful that this could actually probably, decimate an entire population of people. Maybe this isn't a good thing after all. Everyone likes to bring this up. They like to bring up Oppenheimer. They like to bring up, the atomic bomb. But they leave out the fact that Oppenheimer struggled with this decision. And I think that's important for people to hear. That piece of it right there.
How'd that work?
Well,
I love, by the way, that people on my side, I'll just admit it, on the right, have spent the last 80 years defending dropping nuclear weapons on civilians. Like, are you joking?
right.
That's just like prima facie evil.
Yeah.
If you can't, well, if we hadn't done that, then this, that, the other thing, that was actually a great savings. Like, no, it's wrong to drop nuclear weapons on people. And if you find yourself arguing that it's a good thing to drop nuclear weapons on people, then you are evil. Like it's not a tough one, right? It's not a hard call for you. It's not a hard call for me. So with that in mind, like, why would you want nuclear weapons? It's like just a mindless, childish sort of intellectual exercise to justify, like, oh no, it's really good because someone else will get it. How about no? How about?
And I agree with him here. And I don't agree with Tucker Carlson on a lot of things, but I agree with him here about nuclear weapons. I don't think we should have nuclear weapons. I don't think anyone should have nuclear weapons. I don't think nuclear weapons should have ever been developed, period. But they were developed. And the problem that you run into is that some countries have them, some countries don't. Anybody can get trigger happy one day and just go, whoopsie. So I do not support it at all. But the point that Tucker Carlson is making here is like, how could you be happy about annihilating, just innocent people? What's good about that? How does that make you feel good at the end of the day? Unless you believe the narrative by the State Department and mainstream media, which is that the United States is the good guys and everybody else is bad and we have to weed them out.
Like spending all of your effort to prevent this from happening.
Okay, actually, what would be childish is to assume that there are no other players in the world, for example, trying to develop nuclear weapons. The fact is the Nazis were trying to develop nuclear weapons. There was, in fact, a nuclear arms race that was happening at the time. Not only that, as it turns out, the Soviet Union then developed nuclear weapons. And it is mutually assured destruction and nuclear deterrence that has kept the world largely from sinking into another World War III-like mass casualty morass because of the horror of dropping the nuclear bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in the first place. By the way, when he said...
So because other countries were developing nuclear weapons, that gives the U.S. government the excuse to drop the atomic bomb. That makes that okay. So the point that Ben Shapiro is not taking here, the stance that he is not taking, is the fact that we shouldn't applaud nuclear weapons, period. It should have never happened. Nuclear weapons should be disbanded, period, all across the board. Stop with the nukes. You would think that Ben Shapiro would advocate for that, but not if you're totally fine with the destruction of innocent people, which he apparently is totally fine with. This is why he has no problem about all the people being killed in Gaza, because Ben Shapiro believes it serves a greater good for Israel. And he wants to talk about World War III. Who's bringing us closer to World War III right now? Russia or Israel? Think about it, folks.
There's things like, how exactly would you justify? Why are we talking about how many lives it would save? It's just wrong to drop the bomb. Well, no, actually, if you end up saving more lives than are cost by the dropping of the atomic bomb, then it is morally justified to drop the atomic bomb. And that happens to be the reality of the situation. Evan Thomas wrote in the Washington Post fairly recently, the commanders of the Japanese armed forces were fanatics. On August 9th, after Washington dropped the second bomb on Nagasaki, Japan's war minister, General Korichika Anami, asked his fellow members of the Supreme War Council, quote, would not it be wondrous for the whole nation to be destroyed like a beautiful flower? The rulers were...
Pause. It is not acceptable, period. It is not acceptable. Do you hear what he's saying? Ben Shapiro, it seems like to me he's still stuck in 2003 George W. Bush neocon era. And the thing is, whether you looking at Republicans or Democrats, more and more people on the right are also calling out the war complex and the war industry that the US government has gotten us all into. More people are calling that out. More people on the right and the left combined are calling out the war culture and the military industrial complex. Who is Ben speaking to? What is the Daily Wire now? What is it? What is it? Remember, even Candace didn't agree with this. So it's just, this is not popular, Ben. This is not a popular thing anymore. I can't believe you sit there making excuses for killing innocent people.
Fatalistic about taking the rest of the nation with them. The 1 million will die for the emperor was a common headline in the state-controlled press, even after Hiroshima and Nagasaki had been destroyed, and after the Russians had even invaded Japanese-occupied Manchuria. 6 members of the Supreme War Council deadlocked 3-3 on whether to surrender. After the dropping of the second bomb, when Emperor Hirohito decided that he wanted to end the debate and surrender, he had to run away from members of his own military who were threatening to kidnap him and who were trying to find the recording of him surrendering before it could be broadcast on radio to destroy the recording. So yes, it turns out that it was necessary. By the way, if we had not dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the alternative was either an amphibious assault that would have cost probably 1 million American lives, or more likely a giant blockade of the island of Japan, including the mass starvation of the civilian population.
We don't know that. We don't know what would have happened because we did choose to drop the bomb. So we really don't know, Ben. I just, now all of a sudden you care about an entire population of people possibly starving. We're supposed to believe you care about that. That's what he said would have happened. Entire population of people in Japan would have ended up starving. So it's okay to kill them? You care about starving people all of a sudden? You don't care about the starving people in Gaza? Let's get out of here. Let's stop. Let's stop. No.
Resulted in millions of dead Japanese. So why is Tucker just abandoning the moral equation here at all? What is he doing here? That's what's sort of fascinating. Now, I think to understand what Tucker's doing here, you have to understand that this particular interview included a lot of conspiratorial thinking. So he tries to explain it. He says that he was actually radicalized by 2017. That basically until 2017, he believed a lot of narratives that were told by the government and by the mainstream media. And then after 2016, 2017, when it appeared that the intelligence community was militarized against Donald Trump, this is what radicalized him into basically becoming uber critical of everything. This is his story.
Probably unlike you, I didn't have any opinions like that. I was like, fluoride, come on. Yeah. UFOs, you're crazy. You know what I mean? I just like, I had this reflexive, I'm ashamed of it. I'm not bragging about it, but it was 2017. And really it was the Trump campaign. It wasn't that I was like so in love with Trump, though I've always liked Trump because, you know, he's like hilarious and charming and all that, but I wasn't like a Trumper or anything. But it was watching that campaign and particularly his claim that they were spying on him. And I was like, really, you're not, the intel services and federal law enforcement, FBI, do not spy on presidential campaigns. Like, that's so out of the realm. That's so crazy. Like, that could never happen because, of course, there's no democracy in a system like that. And fundamentally, we're a democracy, an imperfect one. It kind of lumbers along, you know, but, like, it's not fake. And then that turned out to be true. And I knew it was true. And that just blew my mind. So I began a process still ongoing of reassessing a lot of other things, like.
This was really interesting to me because this was a revealing moment because it shows you that Tucker Carlson at one point actually believed that we had a true democracy in this country. And he believed that government agencies would never spy on politicians or whoever. You know, that's really revealing moment because I don't know. I think a lot of us watching have always been skeptical of government agencies.
Okay, well, if that was not true, what else is not true? And what else that they told me was a conspiracy theory might actually have some basis in fact. And
Okay, so in other words, he went all the way from, I believe all the narratives to I believe none of the narratives. In fact, I believe the counter of the set of facts with which I am presented. Now, first of all, let me just say about 2016, 2017. Yes, it is incredibly disturbing that the intelligence community was militarized against Donald Trump on the basis of a bunch of trumped up nonsense from the Hillary Clinton campaign. Also, if this exploded your worldview as a conservative, that I find that surprising. Because as a conservative, you're supposed to be generally skeptical of government power. And not only that, if you know anything about presidential history, you know that a wide variety of presidential campaigns have been spied on by the administration in power. In 1940, for
Let me pause here for a second. Greg Bruce says, and it gets significantly more vulgar. Yeah, it was funny. Listen to this. He said that as a conservative, you're supposed to be skeptical, I guess, of the government. Okay. But you can't be skeptical of government agencies? Because isn't that just what Tucker Carlson was talking about Intel and stuff like that? So you can be skeptical of the government, but you can't be skeptical of government agencies. Hell, listen, believe it or not, like all my friends are not lefties. Most of my family members don't even vote. Most of my family members they don't believe in like the voting system. They're not Democrats, Republicans, anything like that. Right. So I have friends that are conservative. I have friends that are liberal, friends that are progressive, socialists, etc., all throughout the spectrum. And what's really interesting is that I have never heard one of them say that they trust the government agencies, whether it's the FBI, the CIA, Intel, any of that. Never heard one of them say that. Not one. But it's true what he's saying here about spying on politicians.
For example, the Wendell Willkie campaign was pretty clearly spied on by the FBI at the behest of FDR. In 1964, LBJ literally bugged Barry Goldwater's headquarters in 1964. Famously, in 1972, the Richard Nixon campaign spied on the campaign of George McGovern, right? That's what Watergate was all about. So actually, there's a fairly well-predicated history of the instruments of law enforcement being misused, which is why there's been a hot debate about the utility of various law enforcement agencies on the right. This has been going on literally my entire lifetime and well before. Okay, but according to Tucker, that radicalized him. And now he went from supposedly believing everything to believing the reverse of everything. Now, that is actually not critical thinking.
You can't really talk about critical thinking, though, Ben, because you went from saying facts don't care about your feelings and having this rap song with this dude where you were saying that you don't care if, you offend people, but you were offended very quickly the moment people started to push back on Israel's actions towards Gaza. So your whole facts don't care about your feelings and all that jazz that you made a lot of money off of goes right out the door. So you really have no room to talk about critical thinking. Get out of here.
That's actually not critical thinking. If what you said is, I took in everything too much, too easily without examining the evidence, and so now I'm going to take a stronger look at the evidence before I come to a conclusion, that would be critical thinking. But saying that the evidence that is presented to you is of the instruments of law enforcement being misused, which is why there's been a hot debate about the utility of various law enforcement agencies on the right. This has been going on literally my entire lifetime and well before. Okay, but according to Tucker, that radicalized him. And now he went from supposedly believing everything to believing the reverse of everything. Now, that is actually.
Now, you were against cancel culture. He's probably the worst person to make this argument. You were against cancel culture. That is one of the reasons why the Daily Wire was started, right? It's supposed to be a beacon of free speech against the cancel culture and the woke rhetoric, so to speak. You were against all those things, Ben, but at the same time, the moment the subject became Israel, all of a sudden you were all for the cancel culture, all for it. So you did a similar thing that you're saying Tucker Carlson did. All of a sudden you went all the way to the other side as well. You flipped.
Facts don't care about your feelings. Facts don't care. I don't care if I offend you.
Actually not critical thinking. That's actually not critical thinking. If what you said is, I took in everything too much, too easily without examining the evidence, and so now I'm going to take a stronger look at the evidence before I come to a conclusion, that would be critical thinking. But saying that the evidence that is presented to you is now of no consequence whatsoever, that no evidence provided is sufficient because the source cannot be trusted, that they are lying to you, that they're always lying to you, always. and that no counter evidence is necessary to support your new thesis because, again, they're lying to you and they've hidden all the evidence. We are now in the world of the unfalsifiable. Any evidence against your new thesis is discounted by the fact that it's coming from a source that lies to you. And no evidence for your thesis is available. Why? Because they hid it and they are lying to you.
This is not about a thesis because Tucker Carlson is not writing a dissertation here, but whatever, here we are. Anyhow, what's really interesting about all of this is that it's almost like, I hope Tucker Carlson does a clapback video. I hope, and I'm not even a fan of Tucker Carlson, but I hope Tucker Carlson sees this video and I hope he does a clap back video at Ben Shapiro. And I'm pretty sure he may know more things about Ben than I do, but I'm just calling out the things that I saw that were right out in the open about the statements that Ben made about cancel culture, etc. Right. So I hope he responds to this video from Ben and claps back real hard. Can he do that? Is that okay for him to do that, guys? I think that is okay. I think it is okay. You can see the rest of the video, of course, on Ben Shapiro's channel. But we got to point out the hypocrisy here, folks. You know, you really have no room to sit up here and say someone flipped completely like this when you did the same thing. And now you've gone on multiple podcasts to basically make it seem like this wasn't your fault and you did not change your position, etc. But you did. But you did, okay? So you can just go back to saying
Wet ass P word.
and just keep it to yourself, because honestly, I can't. I can't, man. I can't. This is, oh my God, the Daily Wire must be hurting right now. Is the Daily Wire hurting? You guys let me know. Are they struggling? No, I don't know. You must be hurting right now. But never forget what Ben told you from the get-go. Facts don't care about your feelings.